Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my preview for the 2025 Formula 2 season. So starting off, we're going to look at the calendar for this year's season. Then we're going to take a look at each of the teams and drivers, and then we're going to finish up this video taking a look at some drivers' predictions for the drivers' championship. So first, taking a look at the schedule for this season. 14 rounds in total, starting this week with the Melbourne race in Australia. That, of course, is the weekend of March 14th through 16th. Then we have a month break going on to Bahrain on April 11th to 13th, Saudi Arabia April 18th to 20th, followed by another, roughly 1 month break in Imola, May 16th to 18th, followed up by Monaco, the 5th round of the season, on May 22nd to 25th. Then, finishing up the month, a very busy end of May, we'll have the Barcelona round in Spain, starting on May 30th and finishing on June 1st. Then another, 3-week break, almost a month there. That's where Canada would be. So break until the Austrian Grand Prix weekend, June 27th through 29th, which is a doubleheader paired with the round at Silverstone, round 8, July 4th to 6th. Another 3-week break actually until the Spa-Francorchamps round, July 25th to 27th, which again is a head-to-head doubleheader with round 10, which is in Budapest, August 1st to 3rd. Then, of course, following the F1 calendar, you have the traditional 1-month summer break, and coming back, you have round 11 in Italy at Monza, September 5th to 7th. Then the last of the kind of summer leg of the season is in Azerbaijan, Baku, the Baku Street Circuit, September 19th to 21st, followed by I think the quite unfortunate 2-month break that we seem to have every year in Formula 2, because the two final Middle Eastern rounds, of course, won the F2 Support Series. And so of those final two races, round 13 in Qatar, November 28th to 30th, followed by the final race of the season on Abu Dhabi Grand Prix weekend, December 5th to December 7th. So that is your calendar for the season. I believe exactly the same one that we had this past season. Of course, order is going to be a little bit different, given that the F1 race schedule, again, is a little bit different. So starting in Australia, I believe first time that's ever happened. We have raced in Formula 2 in Australia, but for those years, Australia has been, after Bahrain traditionally. So taking a look at the teams, we're going to go in Constructors Championship order. I guess Teams Champion, they're not Constructors. Teams Championship order from 2024. So taking a look first with your defending champions, Invicta. So 2 drivers this year for Invicta, Leonardo Fornaroli and Roman Stanek. So for Fornaroli from Italy, he's 20 years of age. This is his first full season in Formula 2. The asterisk means they've did a few races last year. And last season, his full-time series was Formula 3, and he was the Formula 3 champion. Notably, won the championship without winning a single race, so that was interesting. So again, won that championship through, pretty much consistency more than anything else, and is not attached to any driver academy. So interesting driver. Will be interesting to see what he can do this year. His teammate at Invicta, Roman Stanek, 21 years of age. He's from Czechia, the Czech Republic, depending on which name you prefer. This is going to be his 3rd season in Formula 2. This past year, he finished 22nd in the championship, but those first 2 seasons, he was driving for Trident, which is much, much worse than the Formula 3 team. Generally not a great car. So this is really going to be Stanek's first time driving a pretty decent Formula 2 team. So I do think he's going to be a little bit underrated going into the season. Again, like his teammate Fornaroli, he's not attached to any F1 driver academy. Moving on to Campos, and this team has 2 pretty exciting drivers, and a driver that I think everyone should take a look on, have an eye on, simply because I think of all the drivers in this field, in this Formula 2 field this year, I think this team has one of the drivers who's most likely to make the step up to Formula 1 in the next year or so. So first driver, Pepe Marti, 19 years of age. This is his 2nd season in Formula 2. Last year, he finished 14th in the championship, and he is part of the Red Bull Academy, and he is, of course, from Spain. Now, his teammate, very, very highly thought of driver, Arvid Lindblad from Great Britain, 17 years of age, I believe the youngest driver in the field, and this is his first season in Formula 2. Last year in Formula 3, he finished 4th in the championship, was in that title hunt for most of the season, but definitely faded towards the end of the season. And like I said, he is part of the Red Bull Driver Academy, and I think bearing a very poor season in Formula 2, I would expect him to make the step up to Racing Bulls for 2026, replacing either Yuki Tsunoda or Isaac Hadjar. But again, that's going to be that's kind of a conversation for summer break time, after we kind of have a chance to see him in front running machinery. Of course, or at least in Formula 2 machinery. Of course, he already has his F1 Super license. He won the Formula Regional Oceania Championship in New Zealand. So again, if Red Bull so chose, let's say hypothetically Hadjar is having an absolutely miserable season, they could swap. They could basically put Lindblad in mid-season if they really want. Of course, even though he's under 18, apparently there's new guidelines where basically if FIA decide that he's good enough, he can race in F1 before he turns 18. I'm not sure when exactly his birthday is, but that being said, I think you should really keep an eye out for this driver this year. Now, moving on to the next team, MP Motorsport. First driver, Oliver Gerther. From Germany, he's 20 years of age. This is his first full season in Formula 2. And last season, Formula 3, he finished 7th in the championship, and he is part of the Red Bull Driver Academy. His teammate for this year, Richard Verschoor, probably the most experienced driver in Formula 2 this year. 24 years of age. This is going to be his 5th season in Formula 2, and I think he has a decent chance of breaking the all-time F2 race start record this year as well. So again, that's something to watch out for. Last year in F2 Formula 2, he came 8th. I think for sure, a decent driver. I would say probably doesn't quite have the ultimate ceiling of some of the other drivers, especially some of the rookies coming in from F3. But a very, very experienced driver, and you're going to get pretty consistent effort week in, week out from him. So moving on to the next team, High Tech. Two exciting young drivers in this team, and again, both drivers I think some potential for F1 in the future for both of them. So first, Luke Browning from Great Britain, 23 years of age. This is his first full season in Formula 2. Last season, Formula 3 finished 3rd in the championship, and he is racing for the Williams. He's part of the Williams Driver Academy. Of course, Williams have Albon and Sainz right now, so there aren't really any openings there, at least for, I would say, the next 2 years. But, a really good, strong season from him, and then perhaps another season next year, and then, who knows what happens at that point when it comes to driver contracts. His teammate, Dino Beganovic from Sweden, 21 years of age. This is, again, similar to Browning, first full season, so both of them did a couple races here and there last year at the end of the season. And last season in Formula 3 came 6th in the championship and is part of the Ferrari Young Driver Academy. Now for Beganovic, even though the Formula 3 results weren't super spectacular, came into Formula 2 at the end of the season, did very, very well given the circumstances, got a podium even in a sprint race. So I do think expectations are going to be pretty high for him. All right, moving on to Prema. This was a team that, traditionally is regarded as the best team in the junior categories, not necessarily in Formula 2, and definitely a really down season last year, despite the fact they had two now Formula 1 drivers in their team in Behrman and Antonelli. It'll be really interesting to see how they do in the second season of this set of regulations with this Formula 2 car. So first driver, Sebastian Montoya, 19 years of age. Yes, that is Juan Pablo Montoya's son, of course, from Colombia. This is his first season in Formula 2, and last year in Formula 3 came 17, so not great results in Formula 3. So again, expectations, I would say, not super high for him. Technically, he's not part of any driver academy, but he's technically listed as a Red Bull athlete. So he'll still have the Red Bull helmet, but he'll have a normal Prema livery on the car. Now, his teammate, Gabriele Mini, I think really, really highly thought of driver, 19 years of age, first full season for him as well. And last year he was in Formula 3 and he was the runner-up in that series. So very, very close to winning the championship there. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, it was that last lap shootout between Fornaroli and Mini, where Fornaroli basically overtook someone, and that basically was the difference. Basically overtook someone on the last corner, and that was the difference in the championship. So very, very close to being champion last year. Part of the Alpine Young Driver Academy. Not really sure what his F1 prospects are like. Again, starting his rookie season, Colpint was obviously in the wings, as well as Paul Aron as well, who came third in Formula 2 last year. So again, there's quite a few drivers kind of ahead of him on the pecking order, I would say, towards getting an F1 seat. But never say never. If he were to win this Formula 2 as a rookie, that would go a long way to helping him get a spot in F1. If maybe not next year, potentially the year after. Now, moving on to the next team, which is Dams. Jack Crawford, from the United States, 19 years of age. This is his third season in Formula 2, and he came fifth in last year's championship. So I believe he's the highest placed returning driver, so I think definitely could be a factor in the Drivers' Championship this season. Technically, he's part of the Aston Martin Academy. He's a test reserve driver for the team, but realistically speaking, Aston doesn't really have a driver academy. I think he's just kind of there. And so in terms of F1 prospects, not really there, but he's definitely a driver I could see, for example, joining Formula E after this season, as he does have some connections with Andretti. I know Cadillac's coming in this season as well, and they've said they wanted an American driver, so you never know. Perhaps winning the championship this year, if, for example, Colton Herta isn't able to get an F1 super license, Crawford might be in the picture for a Cadillac seat if things go really well for him. Now, his teammate, Chris Miney of India, 24 years of age. This is his third season in Formula 2, and last year finished in 11th. Like Crawford, part of an academy, but in a similar situation, don't think there's really any realistic F1 prospects there. So despite being part of the Alpine Academy, I think realistically he's not going to be in F1 anytime soon or at all. But, for example, similar to Crawford, I could definitely see him joining Formula E in the next year or so. Now, moving on to ART, this is the team of Victor Martins, who I would say, in my opinion, is probably going to be the favorite for the title. And when we get to my predictions, we'll see how I place him. But for Martins, third season, Formula 2 last year, finished 7th, very, very disappointing season. He was seen as one of the favorites last year, given that he was the highest placed rookie from the year before. But unfortunately, things didn't really click with the new car, and as a result was dropped from the Alpine Driver Academy. So currently unattached, isn't really attached to any team. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do after this season. I would expect he would move on and would either go to WEC or would go to somewhere like Formula E. Now, joining him is Ritomo Miyata of Japan, 25 years of age. This is his second season Formula 2, and he finished 19th last year, so not a great result, but it was his first year in Europe. He, of course, was Super Formula champion the year before. That's the Japanese domestic series, and he's technically a Toyota driver. So again, if he has an absolutely fantastic season, perhaps finishes in first top 4 or 5, perhaps Toyota might try to convince Haas to give him a shot at some point in the future, but you never know. For Miata, I think as well, first year on the track, first year learning the tires, I expect him to do okay this year. I think he'll do a bit of a better job than he did last year. Now, moving on to Rodin Motorsport. Now, of course, this was a team that's been in the news recently. Unfortunately, Christian Mansell, one of the two drivers for this team, decided to basically step away from racing last week. We haven't really heard why. There's been a lot of speculation. I'm not really going to get into it, but he was looking like, decently interesting prospect. Not really F1 level, but a guy who could be, part of Formula 2 for, 2 to 3 years. Might win some races, might get some podiums, might be a mid-level driver. Fortunately, stepping away from Formula 2 meant there was a vacancy, and Rodin have decided to fill that vacancy with Amaury Cordial of Belgium. A very experienced driver at this level, not particularly talented, but under those situations, understandable why you would want to go for a driver who at least has experience, given that any driver stepping in would not have not be able to do, would have to basically do the season without preseason testing. So for Cordial, 22 years of age, this is his fourth season in Formula 2, and last season he finished 17th. So not great for him, and yeah, don't really expect him to finish any higher than 15th or so in the championship. Now his teammate, on the other hand, pretty exciting prospect, Alex Dunn, 19 years of age. This is his first year in Formula 3, and last season, or first season in Formula 2. Last year was in Formula 3, where he came 14th in the series. And he is part of the McLaren Young Driver Academy. Of course, McLaren, defending Constructors Champion, 2 young drivers. There isn't really an opportunity there, even if he were to win Formula 2 this year, just kind of like what we saw with Bortoleto, where even though Bortoleto was part of McLaren, won F2, again, McLaren aren't going to be dropping either of Norris or Piastri, so it's kind of one of those situations where for Dunn, even if he does very, very well, it will still be, quite a challenge for him to get into F1 despite being part of a driver academy. But for Dunn, exciting driver. I know he hasn't had, if you look at his stats on Wikipedia, for example, doesn't have the most decorated, career, I would say, especially at the Formula 3 level, but has struggled for funding at times. So again, it'll be really interesting to see what he can do in Formula 2 this year. Now moving on to AIX Racing, their lead driver Joshua Dirksen, probably the biggest surprise from Formula 2 last year. He went straight from Formula Regional to Formula 2, so just like Antonelli skipped Formula 3, came into the series, and I think everyone expected him to be plumb last, but turned out to actually have a really, really good season. Now I know there's some perhaps whisperings, controversies about him perhaps having slightly better engine than some of the other competitors, but nonetheless still finished 10th in his F2 rookie season. Again, not connected to an academy, and he's 21 years of age. Now his teammate this year, not super high expectation for him either. Cian Shields of the United Kingdom, 20 years of age, first season in Formula 2, last year in Formula 3, finished 30th. In the championship, and I believe he was driving a pretty good car too. I believe he was in high tech last year. So again, 30th, no points, I believe. Not a great result for him, and I would say expectations can be really, really low. Maybe not Javier Ragunathan levels of low, but should still be, I would say, consistently the slowest or one of the slowest drivers in qualifying and in the races this year. Now moving on to Trident, 2 drivers this year, 2 rookies. First, Sami Megatuna of France, 20 years of age. This is his first season in Formula 2, and last year in Formula 3, finished in 8th. No driver academy for him. Interesting driver. I thought it was all right in Trident in Formula 3, but I would say it doesn't quite have the ceiling of his former teammate Fornaroli, and I think recently Trident aren't really a top level team, so we might get some points here and there, but yeah, definitely a guy I don't expect to challenge for wins or for podiums on a consistent basis. Now his teammate Max Esterson, 22 years of age. This is his first full season in Formula 2, last year in Formula 3. 21st in the championship, but was driving for Genzo, which are one of the slower teams at that level. So again, those results are to be expected. Bit of an interesting background. I believe he comes from sim racing, so at some point was doing sim racing and switched to kart/cars. So a bit of an interesting background for the American Esterson, and no driver academy for him. So again, neither of these 2 drivers have any realistic prospects of making it to F1. Now, final team, I believe, BAM Amersfoort Racing. Now, John Bennett, they're one of their 2 drivers. Pretty interesting for him. He's basically skipped quite a few levels to drive in Formula 2 this year. 21 years of age, first full season. I believe he came in at the end of last season for a handful of races, and I think he was really just seen as a replacement, but I guess the team were happy with what they saw and decided to give him a full-time seat for 2025. Last year, racing in GB3, British Formula 3, which basically I would say is below Formula 3, below Formula Regional, and so yeah, slightly below FRECA level, I would say, in terms of quality of the competition. Cars are probably a little bit slower. So again, quite a big leap for him going all the way to Formula 2. Finished second in that series, but again, GB3, quality of the field's not super strong. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. Don't have high expectations for him, but nonetheless, hope he does well. And again, for him, no driver academy affiliation. Now, for his teammate Rafael Villagomez of Mexico, 23 years of age. This is his second season in Formula 2. Last year finished 24th in the championship, which I believe was either last or very, very close to last for all of the full-time drivers. And again, for these two drivers, super high expectations, definitely not there. And it'll be interesting to see, what these drivers can do over the course of the season, see if there's any big surprises. Now, moving on, taking a look at the Drivers' Championship and trying to predict the top 10. I'm not going to do all the entire grid just because often there's changes. You can have a fluke result, which can move someone up quite a few positions. So we're just going to take a look at the top 10. Number 10, I'm going to go with Kush Miney. His results last couple of seasons have been pretty decent. Dams is a solid enough team as well. Third season, so again, shouldn't expect a massive increase in performance from the second season. And in fact, his championship standing actually went down first year to second year. But I think that this field is probably quite a bit weaker than last year, so I think 10th is a reasonable prediction to make for Miney. Ninth, I'm going to go with Leonardo Fornaroli for Invicta. Even though he's Formula 3 champion, I don't really think he has the same ceiling as basically his predecessor, Gabriele Bortoleto, despite the fact that he is driving for the defending team's champions, or basically the team that last year's Drivers' Champion is driving for. I think as well doesn't have that super high peaks that you would really want to see at this level. But again, I think that consistency that he showed through F3 last year will perhaps help him again this year. Number 8, I'm going to go with Roman Stanek. I think he's going to do decently well driving for an actual proper team and not driving for Trident. Invicta's pretty strong team, and I think, with Stanek's experience, I think he should have some pretty decent results. So I think 8th in the championship, again, is reasonable expectation for him. Number 7, I'm going to go with Dino Beganovic for High Tech. Well, I know a lot of people are hyping him up based on very, very small sample size at the end of last season. To be honest, I think the Formula 2 grid at the end of last year, there's so many drivers who are basically leaving the series early to go do other stuff just because they were kind of done with it. And they, for example, with Maloney going off to Formula E, Hauger going off to prep for Indy NXT. I think the quality of the grid at the end of the season was quite a bit lower than it was for the majority of the season. So I do think that kind of inflated Beganovic's results a little bit. And again, it'll be interesting to see how we can do over a full season. But I think 7th is still, pretty reasonable result. Number 6, I'm going to go with Versure. I think really, really solid driver, and MP's a pretty decent team as well. 5th season as well for Versure, and I think if he can have some consistency, I think 6th place in the championship's a pretty reasonable expectation for him. Number 5, I'm going to go with Luke Browning. And again, my rationale for putting Browning ahead of Beganovic for teammates is that I think for Browning, his results at the Formula 3 level were pretty impressive. Was not in the best car ever. I would say Trident and Prema were the 2 best cars, and he was driving High-Techs. And so the fact is he had better results than Beganovic and a worse car, so I think reasonable to put him ahead of his teammate for the predictions for the Drivers' Championship. Moving on to number 4, I'm going to go with Gabriele Mini. I think Prema look like they've gotten on top of their issues in preseason testing, so I don't think they'll be quite as bad as they were last year, where they were basically chewing through their tires almost on a weekly basis, or they were having absolutely terrible time setting up the car for qualifying. So I think for Mini, assuming the car is decent, I think he should not necessarily challenge for the championship, but I do think he'll be one of the strongest rookies in the field. Number 3, I'm going to go with Jack Crawford. This is the highest placing returning driver from last year. Again, I don't expect big improvement, but that being said, I do think the field's going to be a little bit weaker than last year, so I think 3rd place for Crawford is a pretty reasonable expectation. Number 2, I'm going to go with Arvid Lindblad. I know expectations for him very, very high. Didn't have the best season with Prema, and I know, for example, his teammate Mini was better than him, but the reality is ours Mini's 2nd season Formula 3, where it was Lindblad's rookie season. So they're both going to be going into Formula 2 as rookies in different teams, and Campos had a very, very strong season last year with Hadjar almost winning the championship, so it seems like they kind of have a handle on these new cars. So I think for Lindblad, I think he should have a really good chance of fighting at the front, and perhaps he competes for the championship. Now for my Drivers' Champion for Formula 2 this year, I'm going to go with Victor Martins, another third-year champion. I know that's not super exciting. I know, when you have rookies winning F2 Championship, I know it's great because then, Formula 1 can hype them up and all. And, obviously the expectations for those drivers, rookie champions, very, very high going into F1. For third-year champions, definitely not as exciting from that perspective. But I do think Martins, I think he'll be able to bounce back from a very tough second season. And I think also the fact that the field's much weaker than last year means that it should be relatively easier to win this year compared to last season. So there you go. There's my predictions, and there is my preview for the 2025 Formula 2 season. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.